The hour of 7:30 has arrived, and I would like to call to order this study session of District 116 for March 5th, 2019. Roll call, please.
Member Carter?
Here.
Member Hall?
Here.
Member Patton?
Here.
Member Pulaski?
Here.
Member Fisher is here. Vice President Rollins?
Here.
And President Deming.
Here, quorum is present. Are there any additions, corrections, or modifications to this evening's agenda?
No.
No. All right, good. We're ready for citizen statements, so if anyone here...
You guys tried the spotlight at the beginning, Jeff.
Excuse me.
The kids are fine.
They changed up the order on the agenda on me. All right. So we'll turn it over to Preston. Got a lot of high school kids here tonight, looking good.
Good evening. What we want to do is we have a Little Tiger Spotlight. This is our AD, Mr. Waller. And what we'd like to do, if you would like, I don't know if you want to introduce the coach first, and then he or she is able to introduce their students. We can go from there.
Yep.
And if they'd like, we'd like for the board members to come up. And what we'd like to do is thank you for your efforts over this school year and what you've been able to do as far as Urbana High School and Urbana School District 116, and acknowledge you for all you do. Because having been a former athlete many years ago, I know how challenging it is to combine academics and athletics. So we want to say thank you very much and give you a few minutes and get you out of here before your car is towed. All right. Waller.
All right, thanks for having us. We appreciate this. Is in my tenure here, I believe this is the first time we've come over as a group. So I'd like it to continue this for each of the seasons. That'd be great. We had a pretty special winter for our athletics and our extracurriculars. And so with that said, we'd like to recognize all of our teams, minus our boys basketballs. Unfortunately cannot be here, but they're finishing up the practice tonight because they won their first regional. I'm sure all of you, it's been plastered all over the what seems like an easy thing to do as far as winning a regional is clearly not that easy, and it took us 30 years since. I don't think it shows age or anything like that, but the last coach to do it for us was nonetheless Dr. Williams. And for those mathematicians, that is 1989 was the last time that feat was accomplished. So our boys will play tomorrow night in the Springfield sectional. They play Lincoln High School. That's at Springfield Southeast High School tomorrow night at 7 p.m. We are pre-selling tickets. If anyone makes the journey, we'll be selling them up until 3 o'clock tomorrow at the high school. So we're expecting a large crowd from Lincoln. We would appreciate it if we also got a large crowd in turn from Urbana to support our kids and our coaches. So with that said, let's jump right into the teams and extracurriculars that we have here tonight. Let's start with girls basketball. If our coaches, Coach Sullivan and Coach Menig, I believe are the ones that are present. If there's another coach that came in late, if you could come to the mic and we could, you could just give a real 20-30 second recap of the season and introduce your players to shake hands with the board.
Thank you guys for having us. Not sure who do I have? I've got Courtney, Amaya, and AJ. If you guys want to step forward, sorry. Thanks. That'll help my back. Hey, I'll make this quick. My third year here, and I want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to come to Urbana. And anybody that's watched, it's been a process. And to see these young ladies get us to 18 wins, and 12 losses this season. Which we're not quite to 30 years, but it's definitely been since, from what I've been told, 2009. That matches the best record, and we were 1 win away from being the best record since 2000. One lady that's standing here doesn't realize it. She was just named to the All-State Honorable Mention. Alaria Jackson was as a junior. And her and Cheyenne Scott, I believe it's the first time we've had 2 members of the team be named to one of the all-conference teams as well. So, as I said to the young ladies, now they get to learn what it's like to be the hunted and not the hunter. Now teams are gunning for them as we move forward. So it's a great time, and again, we thank you guys for all your support that you've given us. Thank you.
Next up is boys swim with Coach Zimmerman and Coach Birdsley.
All right, thank you so much for having us. My name is Michelle Zimmerman. I've been the head coach for Urbana Boys for 4 years, and I can see several swim parents here. You guys are going to shake hands. We've had a great 4 years of swimming. My senior class is getting ready to graduate. Last season, we sent this young man right here to state after 11 years of not competing at state. And at our sectional meet, we had 100% best times, which is made for some great training over the season. And these guys should be really proud.
Next up, we'd like to recognize our cheerleaders, and Coach McMahon, if you could come forward, along with all the cheerleaders.
Our JV and varsity cheerleaders have had a very successful and busy season with both the JV and varsity boys games, and a number of them also on our competition team, and we're more than excited to be traveling with the team for the sectionals game tomorrow night.
Along with cheer for our basketball season, if any of you have been to any of our home games, you know that I think it's a pretty cool event that we do as far as our introductions and just the atmosphere of our gym not being extremely big. And then you couple the fact that we got cheerleaders that are energetic, and this next group that provides just an added element for home court. And so I'd like to recognize our Pep Band, if we could have Darren Hicks and Christy Fernsberg.
Hello, thank you for having us here tonight. Tonight, Pep Band is made up of both concert bands, so instead of inviting 120 students to come through and shake your hands, we went with our band council members that could make it tonight. Band council is a group that's elected, and they do various things throughout the year. So we have Malcolm Forsyth, Ashley Gilbert, Seth Hubbard, Logan Sarver, who is also our vice president this year, and Fia Svensson. So we thank you for honoring us. This is just one component of the program, but it's a really fun one for us as well, and probably one of our more visible things that we do as well as getting out in the community. So thank you very much for having us.
No, you don't have to do it now. dancing, I know that, right? Right, yeah, okay.
I should also say there's one other band student here in the room tonight. Diego Carrillo is back in the back, too, so I want to recognize him, but he was here for swimming as well.
For those of you that didn't hear, I think Dr. Williams was saying that he was going to show you his version of a cartwheel at the end. If you didn't hear it in the back, I think that's what he said.
Hang around till about 12.
There's a couple groups left, but just in case I miss you when you walk in, we do have pool passes, compliments of the school district for attending tonight. So make sure you see Miss Lori Johnson in the back. The next group is our color guard, and coach is Christy Kaplan. Color guard, also known as the winter guard. They did something pretty cool this year. I'm not going to spill the beans. I'm going to let her say it for her.
Hi, thank you so much to the Urbana School Board for inviting us here this evening. This was the first year that we had a winter guard program at Urbana High School. We were very excited about this new addition to our performing arts program. These girls worked really hard. Our season started in November, and we performed at basketball games at halftime, and we also attended 2 regional competitions where we won first place at both. And thank you. And our second regional competition qualified us for state in Springfield about a month ago, where we won. And the team representatives we have here tonight are our senior captains, Veronica Bustamante and Allison Hernandez. And we also have Aaliyah Murphy, Sonia Patel, and Kaylee Krishan. So thank you for having us.
And lastly, we have wrestling. Coach Traveris and the wrestlers. Can you come forward?
All right, thanks guys for having us out so much. I mean, Destiny Spurlock is one of our statisticians. She helps keep the historical records. We have our team captain, Jeremy Macharo, here. He's won multiple state tournaments. Andre Hunt, who is still in the running for a state tournament for the fresh soft competition. Latrice just placed for girls sectionals, and so she'll be competing this weekend as well. Will's going on to baseball, and he's had a great successful season. And Mike finished up his senior year here as a 2-year letter winner at the 220-pound weight class. We had a real successful season. A lot of positives going on about this. I mean, we only had about 14 guys in the wrestling room, so we didn't have quite enough for a full team. But in terms of tournament finishes and state finishes, I mean, we really showed a lot of improvement. We also, I mean, Luke Luffman isn't here, but he was also a 3-time state champion, the first one in the area here for Champaign-Urbana. And our room was small, so we all work out with them. So even Will, who's only 138 pounds. So we all had a hand in that for sure. Okay, thank you.
So we had a recognition ceremony for Luke last week, and we present him with a framed photo similar to this. But this actual frame photo will go in our trophy case, representing each of the pictures is from his championship match from his sophomore year, junior year, and senior year. For those of you that didn't hear, Luke is the first wrestler in Champaign-Urbana history to win 3 state championships. He will be going and wrestling for the University of Illinois next year, so stick around and watch him wrestle. Thanks again for having us, and hope to see you tomorrow night at the boys' basketball.
I also wanted to make sure that we acknowledge the fact that our 7th grade middle school girls volleyball team will be in the state Friday. They won sectionals, and they'll be at state representing Urbana. So go Tigers. Tickets
In the morning?
yesterday. Today, tickets
Today?
went on sale
They
today.
have some left? Oh, okay.
Springfield Southeast.
Yeah.
Anyone's welcome to stay. Anyone's welcome to stay, but I understand why people are leaving. And if I want to remind anybody that if your car is parked in the middle row over there, please go and move it.
Bless you.
We're at the point of our meeting where we have citizen statements, and so anyone that wishes to address the board, please fill out a goldenrod sheet, which you can get from a recording secretary in the back of the room. We'll go ahead and get started. Our first one is David Guth. Tur-
Let,
Good evening.
good evening.
I'm David Guth. I am a parent of two boys in Urbana schools. One is a freshman at Urbana High School, and my youngest is a fourth grader at Leo Elementary. Superintendent Williams and members of the board, tonight I would like to both commend you for including on this evening's agenda discussion of professional recommendations from BKD to implement a formal anti-fraud program, risk management, and installation of an anonymous hotline to report wrongdoing. We applaud the corrective measures you have taken over the past several months. And we encourage you to take this recommendation for employees and others to anonymously report suspected instances of wrongdoing or request to commit unethical acts. We also urge you to implement other systems of checks and balances within the district, such as hiring credentialed human resources staff, data integrity systems that meet FERPA requirements, and implementing a grants accountability system. Thank you again for your tireless leadership during this challenging time of transition.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here tonight that wishes to address the board? Giving an opportunity for anyone that wishes to come forward to address the board. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on. We have no call for an exec meeting after tonight's meeting, and so a motion to approve the agenda would be in order.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Our first administrative briefing is an electricity demand response program.
Carol?
Yes, I invited Ted Bailey to join us tonight. Our energy electricity provider actually brought this program to me a few weeks ago, and there's a limited time, I guess, to get into this program if we want to do it. So I thought I'd bring it to the board tonight and see if there was an interest, and if there is, we will have it on the agenda at the next meeting for approval. But it's one of those that he can explain better, but it sounds too good to be true, so I want to make sure that everybody understands it, but it sounds like a pretty great opportunity for us, so I wanted him to help explain it. So thanks for coming tonight, Ted.
You bet. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Just like Carol said, I had an opportunity to come over here a couple of weeks ago and propose this opportunity to the school district, and she is right on the money. 99.9% of the people that I talk to about this opportunity go, what's the catch? So I think everyone here got a copy of the presentation, usually for limited time. I'll just kind of do a real quick overview, and if you've got any questions as we go through this, I'm happy to stay as long as we need to answer everything for you. So first and foremost, this program got started back in 2016, and that was due to a federal mandate that our local grid operator had to implement what's called a demand response program. Pretty much what a demand response program is, where customers such as the school district enroll in a program who have the ability to reduce their electricity consumption during high peak demand times to help in the prevention of outages. So as I go through this real quick, there's 3 entities that you'll want to keep in mind. The first one is Ameren, which obviously is your utility company. That's what qualifies the school district to be part of this program. The second one is MISO. MISO stands for Mid-Continent Independent System Operator. That is the grid that Ameren falls into. Both of their jobs pretty much share the same responsibility to help keep everybody's lights on. The third entity is Voltus, and that's who I'm here representing tonight. I'm a sales director for Voltus. We are a demand response provider, just like you guys use, I believe it's Calpine, for your supply for your electricity. So you've got a third-party supplier for your electricity. We are, in regards, a third-party supplier for demand response. One of the questions that Carol had brought up to me the other day, too, is Voltus is actually the only demand response provider currently in this territory for MISO. So we don't have any competition, and there's no plan B if you guys want to get in the program. You can't go directly through MISO. You do have to go through a third-party supplier, and that would be through Voltus. So again, just real quickly, this program got started in 2016 due to the federal mandate. So 2017 was our first season. 2018 was our second season. So my responsibility is to go around pretty much the state of Illinois and the other states where MISO was involved and bring to your attention that this program exists. And here's pretty much how the program goes. We would enroll you guys for a summer program only. It's going to start June 1st and it's going to expire August 31st. That's why, for the most part, these are a very good program for school districts and colleges and universities, because the majority of the time, nobody's here. So all that would happen is 2 things. In the event there is a dispatch called, which means we would ask the school district to do some sort of curtailment. There's stress on the grid, they need your resources. We will work with you to come up with a curtailment plan. So you guys, as of right now, have about, and this may not mean a lot to you, you have about 10 locations, 10 different schools that have about 2.2 megawatts of peak demand that you have the ability to reduce. So I would work with your facility managers and people like that to come up with an exact curtailment plan, but your program would start the 1st of June, expire the end of August, so it's going to be a 3-month program. For 2017 and 2018, there has not been an event, which means there was no dispatch, nobody had to do anything, you just received payments. So all of our customers who enroll in this program did not have to do anything, but they're acting as an insurance policy for the grid operator just to be on the back burner in the event that they need them. I'll stop there for a second for questions. Clear as can be, isn't it?
Yeah.
So going back to the statement a second ago, what happens then? Who's paying for this? Why are you going to get paid just to be on the back burner for a program? Well, this isn't really free money because you are paying for this program. Embedded in your electricity supply price that you pay, there's a bunch of little components that make that up, but the biggest part of that is your supply portion. Embedded in that is this demand response program. So you are already paying this. So if you have the ability to enroll in this program and curtail if you are called upon, you're actually getting some of that money back that you are already paying into. If you don't get in the program, no harm, no foul. It just means operationally that the district wouldn't be able to do anything, but there's no money for you to recoup because you're just putting that into your electricity supply portion and it's just gone. But again, school districts are very good candidates before this because up until the 2nd week of August, I believe, nobody's back in school yet. So the only issues that school districts have is thinking about enrolling in this program is, well, Ted, what happens if the kids are back in school? So, anyone thinking that? There's no penalties to be involved in this program. There's no cost, and there's no risk whatsoever. We, meaning Voltus, wear all of the risk, okay? So let's say you enroll your 2.2 megawatts into the program, school's back in there, and you guys get dispatched, let's say the 23rd of August. Kids are back in school. Most of these events are going to take place starting at the hottest point of the day. During the summer, we all lived in the Midwest. We can't wait for that to get here and get past this freeze right now. It's going to be somewhere around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The event will expire at 6 o'clock of an evening. All of these events are going to be in about a 4-hour duration. School, if it starts at 2 o'clock, the school districts have to figure out, okay, class is out at 3:20. What are we going to do for the next hour and 20 minutes? Do we want to comply to this, or do we just want to let it go? You do not have to do anything. If you get dispatched for that day and we ask you to curtail and you're not able to do it because the kids are in school, you don't have to do it. The kicker is you're not going to get compensated then. Because if we ask you to curtail and you can't do it, then you obviously didn't do what you signed up to do, so there's no money to be had. The first example I gave, though, is like in 2017 and 2018, if there is no dispatch, then you're going to get compensated at the end of the year. I'll stop again for questions real quick.
So compensation is on a case-by-case basis. I mean, if we declined it because children were in school, we would simply not get compensated for that particular day, but that doesn't affect compensation for all the other days within our period.
Yeah, so good question. So the maximum amount of times that anyone can be asked in this program to be dispatched is going to be 5. 4-hour duration is the average, so 20 hours is the maximum amount of time. So let's say there was 2 events in a year. One of them happened in July, say July 15th, none of the kids are in school, you guys are able to do it, there's money to be had. August 20th, kids are back in school, you guys decide, you know what, we're not going to do it, there's no payment for that one. At the end of the season, you would get compensated for the one in July, excluded from the one in August. The only thing that really, I don't want to use the word hurts or affects anyone who enrolls in the program, is if there's only one dispatch. We haven't had an event called since 2007. So the likelihood of an event being called at all, especially for this year, for 2019, is, I'll say, almost 0, but the chances are very, very low. Now, as we continue to grow in this program, the fact that they brought this program into effect, they see in the future that there's going to be issues that they're going to have, and we're going to have to wind up curtailing this program somewhere along the way. But yes, to answer your question, 5 times, all in different days, would be the max that they would be able to ask you to do it. Anyone else? Questions?
Yes. Is it all or nothing?
As far as?
Like on a given day, you said between 2 and 4. So the dispatch comes out at 2 o'clock. And we decide at 3 o'clock, because we dismiss at 3:15, at the high school at least, and everybody's gone by 3:30, 3:45. And we decide to turn off the air conditioners at that moment.
It's earlier is better than later. So if there's an event that we need, normally we need those resources at the time the dispatch is going to happen. So one of the criteria that they got for the program is we give a 12-hour notification, which is a long time. Most of these other programs we deal across the country is like an hour to 2-hour notification.
Oh, okay.
So you're going to get sometimes even day-ahead notification is what we're starting to do. So we'll have a primary and secondary person for a contact who's going to let them know, hey, there's a good probability that Thursday of this week there's going to be an event that's going to take place. That gives you 12 hours to kind of get your ducks in a row and decide, are we going to do it or not tomorrow? If you decide to, again, we would need customers to execute that curtailment plan closer to the time that we're asking to do it to than later. Because some people will actually go for the first hour and then run off and not do anything later than that. So that's why we really need those resources at the beginning. But let's say we sign you guys up for 2.2 megawatts and you only wind up curtailing 500 kW. You would get compensated on what you actually did. So again, that's what I would work with you guys as far as a curtailment plan. Here's plan A. We're all in for the first, say, 12 weeks. After that, this is what we would look to do once the kids are back in school. Now, some high schools, just to pass this along, some of the people really embrace this, and they do like an hour assembly. They gather all the kids in the gymnasium and say, hey, this is why the lights are off, and here's what we're doing. And they just kind of do an assembly there on the spot until they run out of time to put the kids on the bus. I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm just saying some school districts really bring this on board. I know, I see the superintendent going, nah, it's not happening here.
Or rolling air conditioning, school 1, air conditioning is off from 2 to 3, or from 2 to 2:15, clear off. Next school, 2:15 to 2:30.
Yep.
And or we measure our usefulness and shut our air conditioners off at 2 and hope that the school doesn't get too hot between 2 and 3.
A lot of entities, and excluding school districts too, just will pre-cool. So if you've got a 12-hour notification or a heads up, if you know there's going to be events starting at 2 o'clock, you might start to pre-cool, drop the temperature down a little bit starting at 10 o'clock. Might get a little bit colder in some of the buildings for a while, but then once you're shutting off at 2, you can usually ride that through for the next 4 hours. But again, you're normally talking for a school district about an hour 20 of lead time before the kids are on the buses and they're out of here, unless there's events. Practices in the school, if there's, you just celebrated a lot of the kids here. I'm sure you have a lot of events going on in some of the buildings here. Then you guys have to make decisions. Do we want to do anything to affect the students here?
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for you. During that time period, June to August 31st, would we be eligible for usage or curtailing savings at 2 of our schools? We have 2 secondary schools that have nominal generators for lighting and whatnot. When an event happens, or you run an event, would we be eligible for anything if we just dictated to those 2 secondary schools that will have our own generated power from those generators?
Yes, so there's actually 10 accounts that I've got on the agreement as far as what qualified. There's some accounts that weren't big enough, if they don't have any peak demand associated with it. Lighting, just standalone lighting, for example, probably wouldn't qualify for a program. It's normally, the biggest draw is going to be AC, the cooling. So if there's associated with that, the cooling that they've got, that's probably what showed up on the 10 accounts that we've got. But yeah, we don't have to take all of that into consideration. We have numerous customers that will enroll 2.2 megawatts because the more you enroll, the more compensation there is. Plans can change. Year number 2, year number 3, year number 4 down the road, and we will talk. Me and Carol will talk every April, and then we'll talk at the end of the season to see how things went. If everything was good, we'll keep it the same. If we need to make some changes, we'll do it after that. But that's what the Plan B that I was talking about.
Okay.
So if we can't do the entire 2.2, we don't have to, but if we reduce that down to Plan B and we got 500 kW or just 1 megawatt, that's what the school district will get compensated on. Again, if there's an event. If no one's asked to do anything, you're going to get compensated on what you enroll in the program. So that's why I always tell everybody, go big. I mean, if you can't do it, there's no penalty on your end.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ted, wasn't there a piece of this where you would actually reimburse the cost of the generators?
Yeah, so you had a couple of just buildings, I think, where you had, and that's where I need to write it down. There's actually a generator agreement, which you don't have, so I'll need to replace that one. So yeah, any runtime. So that's going to be Plan B. I forgot all about that. So the generator that's backing up, what is that, 2 of the locations? 2 of the buildings? That's going to be what you would use for Plan B if the kids are back in school. That's what I would recommend that you do. There's going to be no loss on that because we will actually reimburse you for any of the fuel costs that's burned to run that generator during that 4-hour duration as well. So whatever is going to be covered by that backup generator would be my recommendation to be Plan B for the school district. If no one else is in class up until the kids get back in school, you could do the whole 2.2, and that may flurry a little bit too because if you've got events and stuff going on in the gymnasiums, you know that better than we do. All of these are going to be manual as well. So you're going to have at least 2 people who's going to be our primary and secondary contact. We may wind up, because of the size and the scope of the number of buildings included, we might get a 3rd and maybe 4th person who's saying, okay, we need to make sure that we keep the lights off in the gymnasium. We're turning the AC off for 4 hours here. There's going to have to be a plan in effect. And when we dispatch you, if we dispatch you, that will be included in the email and the text as well. So yeah, good call. I forgot about that.
So you're going to get around to telling us how much money is involved here.
What's that?
You're going to get around to telling us
Yes.
how much money.
Did everyone get a copy of the proposal?
Yeah, if we're doing all this for $5,000, or if we're doing it for a lot more than that.
Good question.
Might make a difference.
So this is how this works. In April of every year, there is what's called a capacity auction. So that capacity will get set for the next year, which starts June 1st and will expire May 31st of the following year. That capacity also goes in hand with what is included in your electricity supply agreement too. So these are going to get set every April. They'll take effect in the 1st of May. I'm sorry, the 1st of June. As of right now, we are using for our proposals, the numbers that I've got here is a 4-year historical number. So the last 4 years, these capacity prices on average cleared at about $21,310 per megawatt year. If we enroll you at roughly 2.2 or 2,200 kW, the estimated gross payments would be $46,882. The school district is going to receive 52% of that revenue share, which would equate to $24,379. If everything stayed the same over a 5-year time period, you're roughly around $122,000 just for the capacity payment portion of the plan. The second column over there, real quick, has to do with an energy payment. So if there is a dispatch for each hour that you are down for the program, there's also going to be an additional energy payment paid as well. Works the exact same way. It's going to be $3,500 per megawatt hour. 2.2 or 2,200 kW in the program is going to equate to $7,700 as far as program payments. 52% of that is going to go to the school district. A little over $4,000 per hour times 4 hours would be $16,000. So if there's one event based on what we just talked about, based on these numbers, it would be around $40,000 to the school district. So full transparency here. These numbers probably here are going to be a little bit higher than what I'm going to forecast or what we're going to expect for 2019. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'll just tell you this. So in 2015, the clearing price came back to be at about $56,500 per megawatt year. 2016, it was around $26,500. 2017, the bottom fell out of the market. It was $500 per megawatt year. So the first year that we got involved in the program, none of our participants got compensated. There was no money to be had. The good news was you all reaped the benefit as far as the capacity part reducing on your electricity supply agreement. This year, the price came to be back at $3,650 per megawatt year. So we're in the process of making payments to our customers. So you hit it right on the head. $5,000 roughly is what the payments would have been to the school district at $3,650. If you guys enrolled your full 2.2 megawatts, that's what you guys would have received to do absolutely nothing.
For the second column.
There is no second column because there was no payments to be had.
Okay, gotcha.
There was no dispatch.
No events.
So the capacity payment has to do with if there is no event, that's the payments that would be paid to the school district. If there is one, then both of these payments would be coming back to them. So again, before the program even starts, me and Carol are going to be back on the phone. I'm going to know exactly what that price is going to clear. I'll update this proposal. She can share that with everyone else. So you'll know exactly, hey, is this worthwhile for the school district to go? You roll the dice and take your chances and say, hey, let's see if there's an event. There's no cost, there's no risk, there's no penalty. If there's one and we can't do it, we don't do it. If there isn't one, we'll just collect our $5,500, move on down the road. We'll talk again the following year in April. I'll tell Carol what the clearing prices are, and then you guys can make the decision again from there. If this gets to the point, because they're going to make changes more than likely every year, that you are not able to comply, you just write out the agreement. I can change your nomination amount from 2,200 kW down to 0, and you guys are basically out of the program for that year. Very, very easy to do business. And I don't know if Carol had a chance to share you too. We use a one-page agreement. So if there's an attorney for the school district, he may look at it and go, where the rest of this, but it's very, very simple to do business with us as well. Any more questions?
It's a long agenda tonight, so I don't
Yeah,
want an
I hear
answer
you.
to this.
I hear you.
But I would like to know what would occur if we have a solar energy or anything like that.
Yeah, kudos to you if you do something like that. That would not affect anything that we're doing. The only thing that might happen is you're going to be reducing your peak demand on whatever facility that you do that on. So let's say you've got your biggest entity, I think, was around 650 kW. You put a couple of panels over there. If it reduces you down to 300 kW, we would have to make that change in your nomination for the next year going forward because you've reduced that peak demand. But it does not affect the program that we're doing with you whatsoever.
Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else? All right. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is Carol to talk about IMF Early Retirement Incentive Program.
Thank you. In your packets, I provided lots of information that I'll just briefly go over. Unfortunately, it's not the best of news for offering this incentive. I've had several people, many people email me, come by and see me, to see when the board's going to offer this again. Because if you've been on the board a long time, you know we've offered it in 3 times previously. 97, 98 was the window, 2003, 2004, and then last in 2011, 12. So those have all been paid through our IMRF rate. It's not money the board's paying out on a one-time basis. It's built into our rate that we pay through IMRF. And in the past, we've always been able to show that the replacements, by hiring the lower paid people after people retire, you replace them with lower paid staff, and the savings in that salary is what pays for the program, for those increased costs in IMRF. Unfortunately, I'm not able to show that this time. So, and it's not just a little bit, it's off by quite a bit. So we had to survey everybody. We surveyed all the IMRF members to find out what year they were looking at. Because when we can only offer this for a 1-year window. And we wanted to make sure we were choosing that 1-year window that was most benefiting our staff. So we surveyed all the members, and the number 1 choice was this upcoming year, 2019-20. So we then went back to IMRF and had them run an actuarial analysis to show, based on all the people that were eligible for that 1-year window, what would the cost be to offer this. So that's what you have attached that IMRF sent us. There were actually 56 members that were eligible during this period, which makes the cost really high. Every time we've done this before, I've been able to go back to IMRF and say, okay, even though 56 members are eligible, we only have 11 people that have indicated they're going out during this window. Can you run me an analysis just with these 11 people? And they've always done that and sent it to me, and that's what we've presented to the board. And that's what, usually those 11 people are the ones that have gone. They will not do that any longer. They have to run it with the total number of eligible employees. So that is the major difference with doing it now versus how we've done it before. They refused to run it with, I think we had 11 people who actually expressed interest in this 1 year, and they will only let us present to the board the 56. So with 56 people eligible, obviously the analysis that we normally run didn't work. Even after 10 years, as you can see, at your place I provided information on the analysis with all 56. And what we've done is we kind of do that out 10 years, showing what the savings is every year, and then compare that to what the increased IMRF cost is. And even after 10 years, the cost is still over $1 million excessive. So not great news. Quit smiling, John, damn it. And
Why are you smiling?
But anyway, I wanted to make sure that I followed through. We've done our best trying to make sure that we responded to the employees that wanted us to look at this. We've looked at it. We will have it back on the board agenda next time. Obviously, we can't recommend it with that amount of cost, but I wanted at least the board to have it on to vote so we can return, get back to those employees and let them know that the board, did approve it or did not approve it based on. But I'm assuming you're not going to approve it based on this. So. But I'm happy to answer questions, but it's just not what I expected. And it doesn't mean that we can't look at this in the future, too. So as people leave eventually anyway, this number will be less, potentially. So it might end up that we could potentially offer it years to come, but just not for this window we're looking at.
I guess my only question is, I just want to make sure I'm understanding you right. You said you made the distinction between how IMRF looked at it or provided the actuarial analysis to you this year versus in the past, and they had to do the analysis on all those eligible 56, even though maybe a small portion of those may actually take advantage of it. Is that what you were saying?
That's true, yes.
And
they have to show the board, because that is the potential impact on the board. There are 56 people eligible. So worst case scenario, all 56 would go. Based on our surveys, that's not going to happen. A lot of these people have no intention of going out in that window. They're not ready to retire yet. They have plans years down the road, but they're eligible right now. So there's no way we can guarantee you that that wouldn't happen, but it's just not very likely.
Okay.
Not very likely at all.
There's no way we could do an expected case and not just a worst case analysis?
We did that, actually. Thank you for asking that question. I even went that extra step and I said, okay, I'm going to do this internally with just those 11 people, and it still didn't work.
Oh, okay.
So I really tried.
Okay.
I mean, we did it with 11 that we had eligible, and it still didn't work.
Okay. Well, thanks for that.
I'm smiling because I'm an IMRF retiree and also ran an agency that was 100% IMRF. And when early retirement happened, we ran the figures, and it never works unless you are using it to downsize. If you're not replacing people, then it is a valuable tool. But if you're going to try to replace people, the replacement salary is too close to the existing salary. The cost is significant, and so we never offered it. After it was done once, when it was first applied, and the experience was bad, very costly, and so it was never done again. So I'm philosophically opposed to it, no matter how the figures were presented. Anything else? Carol, you're up again
Yes, I am.
for budget update.
So at your place, I provided just a one-page document, and there's some on the table, if people got those when they came in. Just wanted to give the board an update on where we're projecting this is current year, 18-19 budget. So went through and did a pretty thorough analysis looking at revenues and expenditures. All of these things are familiar to the board when you see these are a lot of these are ads that the board made this year. They were on the board agenda. If you have any questions, I'm happy to respond to those. The lunch groups at the middle school is on the agenda this evening, but I went ahead and added that in there, but that is actually not approved yet. Otherwise, all of these things have been approved by the board, or the board's very aware of them. So just wanted you to be aware that right now, we had budgeted a deficit of about $600,000 in the ed fund, and we're at about 1.13 right now. So, and again, it's hard at this point of the year. I can look at the expenditures and see where we're over. I know on salaries and things where we're over. It's much harder to estimate where you're going to be under, because there's still time left to be spending money. So people that may be under right now, there may be commitments in the works and things where that money will be spent. So, like I said down under the notes, this is worst case scenario. Hopefully there will be areas that will be underspending too, but it's real hard to estimate those at this time. But we will work to try to do that as much as possible. So any questions?
Board members, any questions of Carol? Appreciate the update.
Yeah. Thank you, Carol.
It's important that we realize that sometimes in the past we budgeted a negative 600, but we usually end up balanced just because of under expenditure of all the line items. And so this gap will most likely narrow if we hold the line on any further expenditures.
Like I said, it's worst case. I'm hoping it'll be better, but more information to come maybe in May or June.
Carol, when will you be ready for next year's budget?
We usually bring that back to the board tentative budget in June. It's unclear as to when we'll know a lot of our allotments as far as grants and things. Hopefully by June we will know that. This will also be our third year under EB evidence-based funding, so I'm hoping, we always know we're going to get at least what we got last year under evidence-based funding. It's that tier money that I'm not sure when we're going to find out, but hopefully we'll have that by June as well.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I wanted to make sure that the board had on its radar is that there were funds that were utilized out of grant funds before last year, like Title and some of these others, TAOP, that you as a board might have to decide how those things are going to be paid for if you're not taking those out of those grants. And I do know the directors were very hesitant about having those taken out from our grant actual, when they came up and talked before a study session. So just keep those things in mind. I'm not going to point out particular which areas. I think all of you are pretty clear on those, but you got to think about that.
All right, any other questions? Ready to move on? Next up, Jean, 2019, 2020, and 2020 and 2021 school calendar. First read.
Okay. In your packet, you have the proposed two-year calendar from the calendar committee. I think that it's, Lori, important for you to know that we didn't invent the calendar and pull it from thin air, that it was actually very hard work over many weeks by a committee of volunteers that included parents, board member, teachers, building admin, central office representation, and support staff. Our members were Sharon Foley, Karen James, Rachel Lehman, parent reps Ruth Ann Fisher, Martha Trukian, Tracy Welch, Manette Kretz, Brian Lake, Alicia Trezise, Dolores Lloyd, Joe Wiemelt, Travis Corson, Jessica Brown, and Jenny Brewer. And some of them are here tonight. Everybody wave. And they will be happy to help answer questions if you have any. We met over 3 formal meetings. We asked the members to poll their constituents and to check with them, before our first meeting about what do you think is important to include in the calendar, what do you like about the current calendar, what do you wish you could tweak. Some of the polling was done via SurveyMonkey, some of it was face-to-face, some of it was by phone, whatever method they felt best to tap into their folks, and to bring that to the first meeting. At the first meeting, we went to small working groups and let each of the groups do some comparison, and things that rose to the top became our working guidelines. We had must-haves. We would really like to do this, and then, well, yeah, if we can get to it, it would be great, but it's quite a third priority. We established our working guidelines, then a subcommittee met and drafted 4 sample calendars that met those guidelines, to some to greater extent than others. We came back together, considered the drafts, measured it against the guidelines, and moved one forward for distribution. We put that out in survey form, and the Urbana Parent Advisory Group, district website, through PTAs, and asked people to comment on those calendars, and then came back and made modifications based on that feedback. So what you have in front of you is a result of those 3 meetings and the response to feedback. Some of our guidelines were that there is a new state statute that we are responding to that requires 176 student instruction days. It also allows for flexibility in the instructional time, that it's up to local districts to determine the specific amount of time that constitutes a student's instructional day. It is no longer dictated by the state. So we had to have 176 as opposed to 174 student instruction days. We had to have 4 institute days and then account for 5 act of God or weather days. Another one of our guiding premises was that we wanted to protect the continuity of instruction as much as possible, to keep students' instructional time and teachers' instructional time intact. We wanted to consider community events like spring and winter breaks and other calendars in the community, and of course federal holidays. Some of our additional considerations that were factored in but weren't on our primary list were UHS graduation and homecoming dates. We wanted to end before Memorial Day. That came from all of our groups. We wanted to find a way to ease into the school year so children didn't have 5 weeks out of the bat, that there was a way to ease them back in from summer break gradually. And we wanted to account for child care needs. When we distributed the survey and got the feedback from folks in the community, these are the topics that rose to the top again and again. So we could get consensus around these are the topics that people cared about, but in reviewing the feedback, we could not find consensus about what they cared about these topics. For everybody that wanted us to start early, there was somebody who wanted us to start late. For everybody who wanted to extend winter break, there was somebody who wanted us to shorten winter break. So we did our very best to consider the feedback. Fall and spring holidays, we scheduled on Friday or Monday as much as possible so that we could keep continuity of instruction. We had many well-reasoned requests to consider major Jewish holidays. We could not do that in these 2 calendar years and honor our commitment to provide continuity of instruction, but we did agree as a committee to ask schools and school-based events and organizations to be cognizant of the major religious holidays for Jewish, Muslim, and Christian religions when they are scheduling events, and to schedule around those events when possible. We have provisions in our board policy and the CBA that allow for excused absences and professional leave for religious holidays. We did observe federal holidays most of the time, and we factored into that child care provisions. The exception to that is Veterans Day. The committee voted to continue the practice of marking Veterans Day by education and celebration among all school communities on that day. Staff Development and Institute Days were scheduled for Monday and Friday when possible, again for that continuity of instruction. We have balanced the number of days in each semester the best we can without going much, much earlier in August or extending winter break. And we have an assurance from the building principal where Fun Day kept rising again and again about, well, but we do Fun Day on the last day of school, but we have an assurance from the building principal that setup can actually occur during the school day at any day when school is in attendance, and it doesn't have to be that last day of school. We do need you to note some things about parent-teacher conferences. We scheduled parent-teacher conferences slightly earlier in the quarter than in the past so that there's a jump start time so that parents could talk with teachers and they could confer and do some intervening and some adjustment prior to the end of the quarter. Progress reports will still come home at the end of the quarter, but by scheduling them just a little earlier in that quarter gives us the time to have some talk and to make some adjustments and decisions about where we're going with students. Another thing to note is that related to our 176 attendance days and the flexibility of attendance, we are allowed to count parent-teacher conferences as attendance days if they are student-led. And student-led conferences are a direction that we've wanted to go for a long time, but this gives us some impetus to get there quickly. The preparation for conferences is absolutely grounded in good teaching and learning because it asks students to know, where am I headed, where am I right now, and then to make a plan about how we're going to get there. And then to speak with their parents, with the teacher present, about how they, as a unit, can help make that happen. And our folks are here, and if you have questions, we are happy to answer them as we can. Yeah, and the other thing, I didn't say, and I forgot, that we have planned to do some teacher education up front during our opening in-service activities around parent-teacher conferences, also for families at the top of the year at the building level, but we're also providing some summer opportunities if people want to get a jump start on thinking about parent-teacher conferences. We have several folks in the district who already practice student-led parent-teacher conferences, and so we're going to tap into them as our local experts to provide boots-on-the-ground support.
Before we get to any specific questions, I just want to thank you for the process that was used to establish the calendar and the amount of involvement. Thank you.
I had good folks to work with. It's nice to work with nice folks.
Other staff members have questions? This last slide intrigues me a lot of student-led. And I know that we started a little bit of...
I'm going to let Manette talk about what's going on. Sorry, John, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's fine. I know we started a little bit of effort a couple of years ago to have students do personal goal setting for the year and kind of develop their own pathway through this. And I view this as a natural extension of that, and it sounds really good.
Very much so. We do have lots of different small pockets of student-led conferences happening, especially in elective, I know secondary, so in small group pockets happening. We do have several teams that have over the years piloted, thank you, student-led conferences and built that to the benefit of the students and teachers and staff and parents that come to those. I have reached out to those groups that have done it for several years to do a PD type, let's see what you're doing and replicate it because it's worked so well for those groups for many years. So I'm trying to get those boots on the ground to replicate the process.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions? This will be before us for a vote, I'm assuming, at our next meeting next week. For both years. I appreciate the fact that we're doing it 2 years at a time. All right. Thank you. Next on our agenda is student representation discussion. Paul.
This kind of came as a result of the really powerful student public comment we had 2 meetings ago, and just thought we should initiate a board discussion with regards to different strategies that we could take to have more student input at these meetings. I mean, I know John talked about in the past his attendance at the National School Board Conference, where certain states had gone further than us, like in particular Alaska, with actually having a student representative, on their boards of ed. So, but I just want to we could discuss different options, and then maybe have a direction to administration to put a proposal together.
At the National School Board meeting, his name is Derek Peterson, and he works all over the United States in helping, and he's from Alaska. He started in Alaska, and that's for nearly a full, it's just so short because they can't be elected representatives in a community like we all are, but it just comes really, really close to full school board membership on behalf of a high school student. But I think what you're talking about, and what I recollect, and I think all of us have been very much impacted by the eloquence of our high school students coming before us, not just 2 weeks ago, but I'm thinking back over the last several months. And I think it's a voice that we in Urbana need to listen to, and listen to more carefully than perhaps we have in the past. Even I know that it's making the rounds is Tessine's article in the Echo, we have a student body that is very capable of contributing tremendously to our discussions. It sometimes can get boring. I see 2 of you sitting back there from the cheerleader squad, but thank you. You're heroes if you can sit here and listen to all this. I think that this is an idea that was actually part of a superintendent's performance contract, and efforts were started and just not able to be brought to completion. And I think it's time that we pay close attention to this and see what we can do.
And I just want to say, Ann, that meeting we went to with the doctoral students and the board members presented, they had a 19-year-old board member. He was a freshman. So he probably was groomed in the school board meetings where he was from. Was it Southern Illinois or suburbs of Chicago? Yes, and he is a board member.
That's specifically what they do in Alaska. Is a lot of their school board members started out as high school students. And it's not only good benefit for us, but it also is a good opportunity to participate in American representative democracy. So I'm a big fan of, if we can finally get this moved forward. I'm overdue for it.
I am too.
I mean, so what I guess we're wondering about now is the logistics of it. I mean, we have to figure out how to select the student representative, what kind of voice they would have, in these meetings. Would it just be a report? Would they be able to sit at the table and chime in during each and every discussion we have here? Obviously, due to legal reasons, they wouldn't have voting power. But as a board, should we have a subcommittee of the board, or that will work with administration? Should we ask for the high school administration to offer a recommendation on how to select in?
Well, I would very much like for us to make use of the resources that the National School Board Association makes available to us on this. I will dig through my records. I may have turned them over to the administration, but if I've got them, they're easily retrievable. But there's a body of work out there, and in order for us to analyze best practices, I think we should have some research done to help us do that. Now, that is moving us from step A to maybe step C, E, F, G, way down the line. But in the meantime, because that could take a little while, I'm not at all opposed to having the high school student body decide who would be a good spokesperson for them, and have maybe not every meeting, but maybe every other meeting, every other month, not every meeting, but have some communication from the high school that stops short but just gets the ball rolling, so that when we're ready to move in the direction that the National School Board advises us to do, that our student body likewise is ready and is brought along and is used to the fact of having somebody here on a whatever frequent basis we decide to give us a report. That's just the best way, I think, to get both sides acclimated and ready.
Don't you think that would be possible for us to get something in place by the fall?
I think in terms of having the reports and stuff, absolutely. I think our interim leadership right now is burdened to the hilt.
Yeah.
So I was going to make this a point when we get around to Thursday night, when we get around to talking about what we're looking for in the next superintendent. I'd love it if we got a superintendent that's got some strong familiarization with student involvement.
I think one thing you already have, and again, you may not want to go down this road, but you have a student senate at the high school that's been voted into those positions. So, and they do have a president. So I guess from my perspective, if you're trying to at least fast track this as far as reports, you already have a representative body. As far as the high school is concerned, and working with them and maybe the sponsor of Student Senate to present, or however the board decides, will be one way of at least moving it down the field, so to speak.
I'd love that. That could start in April.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's how you'd like to
Yeah, how does,
help us move this forward.
Not
Yeah.
a problem.
Preston will
okay.
talk with our high school administration and see if we can move this forward.
Yes.
Great.
And the Student Senate faculty representative, because that's the individual
Absolutely.
that has a closer tie to the individuals, and we'll go from there.
Great.
It might elevate the importance of student senate elections, because I know that once this school board got rid of their major money source, which was the vending machines in the high school, a little, yeah, I know we did. A little bit of the prestige and activity of the student senate was suffered a little bit after that. Speaking as the parent of a son who lived through that and still talks to me about it. So, any other comments? I think it's a fantastic idea, and I'm
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
if other board members.
Long overdue.
Good.
Yep. Thank you.
We're next ready, and I think, Paul, you wanted to introduce this again as the anonymous hotline discussion. I know I was incapacitated at the time that the audit was presented, but
I mean, yeah, BKK, when they did their audit, or BKD, sorry, when they did their audit, had a series of recommendations. This was just one of them that was tied specifically to potential issues involving grants, and they recommended an anonymous hotline be put in place for reporting purposes, which we don't have. And I just looked over that and thought it was a good idea considering recent events. We already do have the training, and that's in front of us as well, that takes place for staff members to It teaches them the reporting the current reporting methods for fraud, waste, or abuse situations. But there's nothing in here about an anonymous way of doing it. So I thought it would be a great topic for us to discuss tonight on different ways we could do that. I think the one thing that's important when we do an anonymous method is we have to still have something that is actionable, something that would provide enough evidence for administration or board representative to do research on it. We also need to figure out who would monitor this hotline. So there's a lot of open questions involved in the implementation of it, but I just thought we should begin the discussion on how to deal with this recommendation.
Other board members?
And so how would we publicize the availability of this?
It should be part of the training that we
see,
already
okay.
do.
And then, I mean, would this be only available to district employees? I mean, I guess, I'm trying to think if it would be, who would most likely take advantage of this anonymous hotline?
I'm thinking district employees because it would be, like Paul said, within their training when they got hired. Am I right thinking that, Paul? Is that what your thought process is?
Probably the board's discretion, but that's kind of the direction I was going. But obviously, we could have another way of doing it for just the general public to make anonymous comment, but they can already do that by sending emails.
I was going to say, I think the public can already do that.
So there's going to be a direct number
Well,
given to them, because I mandated a hotline and, of course, the crisis line, 24-hour. And it was a contract, so I want to know if this is internal. It was a contract with Consolidated. So they man everything, plumbers, funeral homes, whatever. They patch them in. So is this something we doing internally? Is that what the process? Or is it going to be contractual? Because no one knows what's on the crisis line.
Well, considering this came out of a recommendation by an auditor who doesn't just audit us, but audits other districts, there has to be best practices out there that have implemented this that we could
Yeah,
reference.
you would have
It
to
wouldn't
look
necessarily
at
have to be a voice hotline. It could be some other electronic way that would still provide anonymity.
I did check with IT, MC Neal, and asked him if there was a way on our website to be able to have anonymously things reported through the website, and he thought that would be pretty easy to implement something like that. He wasn't sure if it would be a form or what, but it would be something that he thinks would be pretty easy to implement on our website and allow it to be anonymous as well. That was the important part. And we would just have to decide if you wanted that to be accessible with just staff or if you wanted anybody to access it. It might have to be on the staff intranet potentially. But yeah, there's a way to do it without having a phone hotline and paying somebody contractually to do it.
We ought to decide also, who would be reported when that button's hit as well. I would probably recommend the administration and the board, or some board designee, or John had probably mentioned the district treasurer, right?
Yeah, I was, this is in reaction to the audit, but it's also in reaction to many staff members contacting us indicating a fear of reprisals. So that fear of reprisal is what is driving the issue of it being anonymous. And so I'm leaning towards staff. I think the public has many, many ways of contacting us without that same roadblock. In trying to, and I know that this started at the audit, but I can see this getting into some other areas as well, I had suggested as an option the school treasurer, who is bound by being a staff member but isn't really part of the internal staff. I mean, that's why we have a treasurer. He signs all the checks to make sure that the checks are bona fide and written correctly and that kind of thing. And our treasurer at the moment, so you don't have to file a FOIA to find out, is Michael Kane, who was at one time was a superintendent over at Unit 4. And before Michael, it was another person who was, Roger Markham, who was also a superintendent. So this district has a history of taking retired superintendents, past superintendents to serve in that role, so they would have the ability to understand the complaint and know how to help us properly address it. It was just my idea, but I agree with Paul that you know, the CPAs would not have done this, would not have recommended it if they don't already have some pretty good models for us to choose from. So I think probably our next communication should be back to them saying, we're wanting to take you up on this. Can you give us a couple of really good, two or three really good examples? And Carol, I think you could probably help us get that pretty quickly. And then we can take a look at those and see if we've missed something in our immediate thinking, but gives us the ability to hopefully move forward again on a pretty quick basis, but on a well-grounded and fairly well-researched basis.
Very good.
I'm wholeheartedly in favor of that.
Likewise. Yep.
Any board members have some issues with this?
I agree with you, John. I think that having someone who's not fully connected would be a best option, because I know I myself would feel more comfortable talking to someone who wasn't in the regular day-to-day, you know.
Not in the supervisory chain.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I'm in agreement.
And this marks a significant difference in the past, in that when things have been submitted anonymously, it's sometimes very, very difficult to do the follow-up and to consider what is being said. And so I want to make sure that whoever is the recipient of these issues and concerns has enough knowledge about how to determine the veracity of the complaint. A past superintendent would have that, at least know where to start the process, which might be informing the board of such a receipt. It might be informing the superintendent of such an option, or one of the assistant superintendents, but knowing where to find out the relevancy of the complaint. I don't mean relevancy, I'm at a loss for words. The importance, the veracity and the importance of the complaint.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Carol, can we assume that you will be working on that then? Is that okay? Okay. All right. Thank you. Superintendent search update. Peggy.
Yeah. I was just going to give a very brief update, mostly to remind the public that the important community engagement process for our superintendent search begins this week, and tomorrow is the community forum, which is an opportunity to provide input to the kind of superintendent we wish to have serve our school district. That community forum is open to all. It's from 6 to 7 tomorrow at the Urbana High School auditorium. Again, it's open to all. It will be recorded and rebroadcast. In addition to that community forum, over the next 2 days, there'll be 18 different focus groups that will be comprised of different bodies, students, parents, teachers, administrators, community leaders, faith leaders, business groups. There'll be 4 different parent groups included in that focus groups, 2 for English-speaking parents, 1 for French-speaking parents, 1 for Spanish-speaking parents. And again, those focus groups will take place over the next 2 days. In addition, there is an online survey to provide input to the search process, and it is open to all and will be live until March 8th, which is just the end of this week. Again, it's an opportunity to provide input to the kind of leader we wish to have serve our school district. You can get the link to that online survey at our district website under information about the search process. The information is available in English, Spanish, and French. Also on the website, you can find out additional information about the timeline, so you can kind of see where this community engagement process will lead us over the next several weeks as we move towards selecting the next leader of our school district. But I hope everyone will take advantage of one or more of these opportunities to provide input to shape the profile of the kind of leader we wish to have in Urbana School District. So please get involved.
I'd like to add to that, the consultant has already informed us that the first day the survey went up, the first couple of days they had 300 responses, which they said is just unbelievable for a community of this size. So we really appreciate the interest in this project by our community. And the forum tomorrow is open to absolutely everybody except 7 people. The consultant has, so I don't want anybody to think that the school board members are shirking their duties by not being there. We have specifically been instructed to not be there and to allow the conversation to go unfettered with any problems that we might cause by being present. And so please understand that. And then it will follow up Thursday night. We will have a meeting at 6:30. A board, that will be the board's opportunity to discuss in generalities in open session, and then we'll be going into closed session at the consultant's request for us to provide some specific information that they need from the 7 of us as they develop this profile. So, thank you. Any other board members want to? We are working hard to make sure that everybody has a chance to participate in this. And in addition to the parent forum, there's also a staff forum. I believe it's tomorrow as well at Thursday at 4. Thank you. Thursday at 4 p.m. for all staff. So, all right. I don't know.
Oh, I very much heard about it. It's actually muffins. It's not muffins for moms. I remember that was at Williams Elementary. But actually, Dion, it's 8 to 9, right? It's morning muffins starting at 8 o'clock at Lincoln Square. Everyone's invited. Come on out, have a muffin and some coffee, and the superintendent will be there. But I am not supposed to speak. I will be eating a muffin and having some coffee. All right.
Thank you. All right. Hearing no other comments about that, we'll move on. We have no policy review tonight. We have action items, some individual action items, and since there are 2 and they're pretty disparate, different, we'll take them one at a time rather than doing consent. So school work plans, Illinois Empower. Jean.
Yes, we're asking for your approval of the 4 school work plans through the Illinois Empower process that were presented to you last board meeting. It is imperative that we get these passed so that we can get them to the State Board of Education, so we can get them approved, start that process, and get this money to these folks. They have, all of the monies from this grant have to be spent by August 31st of 2019. We've been behind the 8 ball from the beginning on this, largely because of it being a new system from the state and the state trying to figure it out. We've been pedaling as fast as we can, and our folks have been working as fast as they can. Most of the principals are still here. If you have questions for them, they're happy to answer them for you.
Board members, any question? Motion would be in order to approve this.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. This is getting money as opposed to spending money. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. Next is the reverse. UMS lunchroom extra supervision. and we noted that this was on Carol's plan. Joe came and talked to us about this the last time. If there's any discussion about it, Joe's here to answer any questions. Otherwise, motion would be in order.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Joe, is there anything that you were bursting at the seams to tell us? All right.
I just want to thank you for doing this structurally differently next year, so it's not a continuing expense. But I'm very happy to continue for the rest of the year.
We're meeting on Thursday with a small committee to look at our master schedule to address some of those issues for next year.
I think we need to reiterate to our community then that this is for this year. It is not continuation. We are not approving this as a permanent add to our budget. This is a one-time.
Yeah.
All right, roll call, please.
Member Carter?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Patton?
Yes.
Member Pulaski?
Yes.
Member Fisher votes yes. Vice President Rollins?
Yes.
yea, and President Kemp?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I almost forgot this was a study session.
Yeah, I know. Too much
It
business.
is already 5 minutes to 9. Jean, on your toes. Let's go fast. Professional development update.
Here it comes. Okay. This is quite a production. I apologize for the production number. I too can learn PC platform. I'm trainable. It's okay. We're here to talk to you tonight about professional development or professional learning opportunities that we have available in the district. Talk to you a little bit about the importance of professional development, where we want to be, what we're doing right now, and plans that we have for closing the gap. First, we want to look at where we're headed. We think it's very important to strengthen professional practice for our teachers, our administrators, our support staff, focused on the needs of our students so that we can learn and problem solve together and positively affect learning outcomes for our kids. We're going to take a look first at where we are right now. With the structures that we currently have in place, we try to meet individual needs, so that the needs of the individual staff members, building and school improvement plan needs, and district initiative needs. As an aside, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, it's important for you to know that in this current year, we are operating without a director of professional development.
The curriculum department has 3 areas of primary support. So that is curriculum instruction and assessment, social emotional learning, and then also racial equity has been embedded into our monthly sessions. Currently, right now, technology integration is considered to be a part of curriculum instruction and assessment, and it's not a separate focus, but it is integrated throughout the curriculum. There are many ways in which we provide opportunities for our staff to be instructional leaders. If you see on the grid there, we'll start first with the grade level leaders and department chairs. We strive in the district to make sure that we are building capacity as we continue to build our teachers. We're continuing to build instructional leaders as well. Grade level leaders lead on staff development days, and the department chairs lead on the early out Wednesdays. The instructional coaches also provide coaching to any staff through job embedded support, along with also providing instructional sharing days. The staff has opportunities within the school day for grade level and team collaborations, and also outside of that, they do also have Monday times at their staff meetings as well. Also, our new teacher mentoring program has regularly scheduled meetings and ongoing support through our mentor coordinator program, and that also is for our first and second year teachers. Last but not least, our dual language programs and EL supports are provided through an annual Dual Language Institute. Also, conferences, workshops are provided to all of our staff on an ongoing basis.
We wanted to talk specifically about the new teacher mentoring program because that is a very unique component of our professional development. And so in the different components that make up the new teacher mentoring program, we have individual mentoring, that we have our trained mentors, new teacher mentors, and they are required to do 40+ hours of support throughout their first and second year of their teaching. And that is actually offered to any of our new hires, whether they're brand new teachers or coming with experience, our social workers, anyone who is new to our district as a certified staff member. So in addition to that, our induction coordinators at the buildings facilitate monthly meetings and provide ongoing support related to instruction, curriculum, as well as just building culture and climate in their classrooms and making sure that they understand the nuts and bolts that go into teaching on a regular basis. We also then have district-wide workshops on a monthly basis or semi-monthly basis to provide ongoing support as a whole population of new teachers and first and second year teachers, covering a lot of social and emotional learning, as well as, again, building that culture and climate in the classroom, differentiation, different techniques as they kind of develop into our more experienced teachers. We also have additional trainings that we've been looking at over the last 2 years of adding for our special education pathways teachers, as well as some Eureka math training and other kinds of trainings that we notice are needed. And so we'll use some ISD days, some instructional sharing days to do those, or look at how we can include those within our workshops that we already have established. And then we also just wanted to note that we have the National Board Teaching Certification process as well, and we have 2 trained trainers for that program, and that takes place outside of the school day.
Hi, everyone. Hi. I'm going to talk about social and emotional learning, which you might hear referred to as SEL. SEL is, we are guided by the state standards in SEL, which was adopted by ISBE. So there are 4 focused areas in professional development that we've worked on this year. One of them is the PBIS system. This is a tiered system of support. We have strived over the years to implement the system with fidelity. We've had large turnover in staff this year, new administrators. So this past summer, we did a pretty extensive training in PBIS. We had the Midwest Network come in and train our PBIS teams, which means coaches and various people throughout the school and administrators from each of our buildings. We also meet quarterly with the network, and we do PBIS coaches meetings, so all of our buildings have at least one PBIS coach. Most of them have 2. So we meet quarterly, and we have schools that come from across this area and meet at our middle school with our coaches. And so that's been really good exchange of information between different school districts across the central part of the state, and also for our district coaches to be able to share information between themselves too. This past Winter Institute, we had the network come in and do a refresh of information on PBIS with our teams. We also brought in all of our support staff from the middle school and the high school and trained and worked with them too. Let's see, I am considered an external coach for the project, and I can be called in for technical assistance if buildings need me. We also have talked a lot about MTSS and RTI. Our district is probably a little bit more familiar with the term RTI, which is response to intervention. The new term, though, is multi-tiered systems of support. It is a tiered system which implies both academics and behavior. And data is used to inform decisions being made for intervening with students at different levels. We have, as you know, we have big support teams in both of our secondary schools, and they are really working on that whole data-informed approach. It's new. We have a lot of new staff. I will say they're meeting usually weekly. I think it's 3 times a week. And really looking at how we're intervening with our students. We've brought in a number of community agencies who are talking with us, helping us. We're trying to really work on that teaming approach at both at the secondary level. I'm hopeful. I like the whole approach, and it's something that our district has been doing for a long time. The truancy and attendance issue is something that we've started doing some training on. We have student engagement advocates at our secondary levels primarily, but also 2 at our elementary levels too. So we'll be learning to intervene with chronic absentees and truants or prior to truancy. So this is something that I think will only become stronger, more preventative, and more interventions put into place as we move forward. And finally, trauma-informed practices, which we know that a lot of our students, some of our staff members, our families have been impacted by trauma. So we are working really hard to get that word out, how we can develop trauma-sensitive classrooms in our school district. We've done a lot of training around that area this past year. We have a champion in our community who has been coming in and doing that training for us, Karen Sims. And it's been about a year now. We've had her start with administrators, and we've done just multiple trainings in that area with her. Let's see. We also, as part of SEL, that means we've talked about morning meetings and second step. We have materials for all of our teachers at the elementary buildings. We have advisory classes at our middle school buildings where we're teaching second step. This year we did something unique at our Institute Day. We brought in Kevin McClure from Classrooms in Action, which is through ISB and Illinois State University, and he talked with all of our elementary teachers about infusing SEL common language throughout the day versus not just during a 30-minute sequence where they're teaching. So that's something that we plan on working more on. He will be advising us and helping us do that. So it's not just a one-time lesson. It's infused throughout. So I guess next is restorative practices, and Elaine Spungen is here today to talk about what she's been doing with restorative practices.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So just as a reminder to everyone, because I'm still getting questions about the high school and the middle school, is that my contract was moved from secondary to elementary, technically in August and non-technically last February when the restructuring happened. So Conflict 180 is sort of doing 3 broad things. There's some activities that are district level support, when there are high stakes kind of restorative circles that are needed between staff and staff or admin. Sometimes our team is called in for those, and I just want to say for the record that we think that's a positive thing, that people are requesting a circle, not necessarily a call of desperation, but actually moving towards conflict in a positive way. I have a weekly restorative newsletter that is sent out to many USD 116 staff. Last month's theme was courage, courageous conversations. This month's theme is going to be effective feedback. It's March. And then Conflict 180 also did a 20-hour facilitation training, 24. It felt like a 24-hour. It was a 20-hour facilitation training for staff that went through several iterations. It was originally supposed to be for all support staff in the district. Then it became for Wiley staff only. at the last minute it was opened up. So for that reason, those decisions were at the administrative level. Not everybody who wanted to participate was able to. However, quite a few people, 30 staff participated in that, and I think 20 did all the sessions. And those are Friday nights, 4 to 8 p.m., so tremendous commitment from staff in this district to learn facilitation. And then elementary school support, which I circled that to show that I'm going to zoom in on that on the next page. Yeah, so these 3 elementary schools, which were chosen by the previous administration team, in discussion with those building administration, so between district and building administration, they each decided sort of a different level of engagement with Conflict 180. So some engaged 2 professional development trainings a month. And I also have been doing classroom and conflict consults. So if there's a sticky situation, I come in and observe and help. And others are doing, 1 a quarter, or Yankee Ridge at that time had already had a professional development plan. They were going to be doing conscious discipline. By the time the district asked Conflict 180 to work with Yankee Ridge, it was October. Our plan, I think, is dated October 4th. So I've been getting to know the Yankee Ridge staff, sitting on some important meetings, building trust, with the hope and plan that I can help participate or train them to do some staff dialogues or other conflict dialogues when needed.
So continuing to talk about professional development that we do district-wide, as we have been talking about racial equity in the district and district commitments, beginning with the equity leadership team. So this is our 3rd year that the equity leadership team has been established. So if very quickly, if members of the equity leadership team can just kind of give away a wave. There are many of us in the room today. So the first responsibility for equity leadership team is to do PD cadre training. So we have PD cadres that are located in every single building in the school district. And so there are quarterly PD cadre meetings. These meeting topics can vary depending on the scope and sequence for the year for the equity focus, as well as equity leadership team also provides PD cadre training through the Racial Equity Summer Institute as well. There's also a focus on culturally responsive teaching. Within that, this year, our PD cadre training, that has been the focus. We've been using the Zaretta Hammond book to do PD cadre training, and they have then been taking that back to their buildings and doing various different activities with their buildings as far as how to be more culturally responsive in the classroom and in their buildings. So the PD cadre then have been presenting 1 monthly meeting to their staff, and then also assisting with the Leading for Racial Equity on their staff development days within their buildings as well. Various different administrators, teachers, and staff are also leading book studies around equity issues across the district. Much of that is in collaboration with Jessica in the booklet, in the PD booklet that comes out 3 times a year. As well as the equity leadership team and the building school improvement teams have been using a more equity-focused school improvement planning process. So last year we developed a more outlined version for school improvement planning that had more of an equity focus. So as school improvement teams were developing their plans for the following year, they were doing it through more of an equity lens, and that is throughout the year. And then it's also part of the Racial Equity Summer Institute, so part of the days that the principals have at the end of the school year before the elementary principals go into their summer break is focusing on those school improvement plans. So as we go into district commitments, our commitments from racial equity, as I had mentioned, continue to build staff capacity. So looking at the equity audit and continue to look at district improvement planning process. This is all, we're also continuing to look at racial equity through our recruitment and retention committee. Continuing to look at culturally responsive practices and professional development. Continue to review our policies, procedures, and structures across the board through an equity lens, as well as continuing to work with our PD cadre on a monthly basis, and having them continue to present sessions for all of their staff, as well as continue to focus on culturally responsive curriculum and instruction, as well as culturally responsive management strategies and other strategies within the classrooms and buildings. We are in the process of planning a summer institute again for this year. It will be revised a little bit, but we are still wanting to continue to build capacity in that way as well as looking at courses to offer through professional development as well in collaboration with the booklet.
So we've talked about some of these things already, but we just wanted to reiterate. Opening day, we use opening day to update on our district initiatives and do some preparation and planning for the year. And so that is led by the PD department, organizing the day, but specifically leading the sessions are administrators, coordinators, grade level leaders who lead some sessions in the afternoon sometimes. And then we recruit outside presenters as needed based on the initiatives that we have for that year. And then we've noted a couple times our Winter Institute event that just wrapped up February 17th. It was this year. And so that event is an annual event to be able to provide professional development for all of our staff in our district. And so this year we had a focus on We're Here for You. And so we really wanted to focus on building self-care in for our staff and realizing that this year in particular, trying to be responsive to the needs of our staff and knowing that they don't necessarily always take care of themselves. And so we had a lot of sessions focused on self-care, focused on how to take that then back into the classroom, but really just wanting to build them up and have time for them to see how in order to take care of students, you have to take care of yourself first. And part of that, we also had a vendor fair going on at the same time, so we had a lot of our community programs and organizations there to share information with our staff on how to take care of themselves. At that event, we also made sure that we had topics related to content-specific instructional practices. We recruited outside presenters based on the needs that we knew were in the classrooms as well as for our teachers' self-care. And then we also have a fall, spring, and summer offerings booklet that we do that we've mentioned in a couple different ways, including our racial equity work, our curriculum and instruction needs, as well as some of those SEL opportunities. And so we put that together and we recruit mainly in-district staff to facilitate those sessions. They happen either online, face-to-face, through book studies. We have a multitude of ways to provide that professional development to them. And we also have a special cohort for our support staff that takes place at that time too, so that we're making sure that we're meeting all different staff's needs and trying to provide them some kind of professional development for where they're at.
Last but not least, technology. As you heard before previously, our Skyward Suite, currently right now, all of our staff go through the necessary trainings each year. And so there are videos, there are also manuals provided for them, and they have to attend that training. And then also the tech team right now is in the process of creating step-by-step videos. And so staff members can watch the videos and find out how to navigate through Skyward, how do you record your grades, how do you use the grade book, and any other necessary things they need in order to obtain information.
Now, in terms of moving forward, our plans this spring include a needs analysis from all of these different groups that you've heard mentioned. So we will conduct a needs analysis with each group and find out what their specific needs are. Ms. Jeffrey's department is currently analyzing all of the evaluations from professional development opportunities and programs. When those are done, we will share it with this group, who I will introduce before I take questions because I forgot to do that. And we plan to maintain and try to extend some of our extended time positions that provide these professional learning things. Our professional development cadre, grade level leaders, our department leaders, teacher mentors, some induction support. We're hoping through our tech planning that we reinstitute tech cadre so that there is some on-the-ground support at the building level for tech integration, not just the nuts and bolts thing. We haven't done that yet because the committee is still working, but we're hopeful. We are also planning an administrative leadership academy for the first thing when folks get back right after registration to work with our building level administrators and provide them with a principal's handbook that Ms. Jeffries and her department are working on. We have not provided, to our knowledge, the first year administrator mentoring that we needed to provide, and we intend to make those changes immediately and have a plan for moving forward. Our biggest need at this point is to restore the Director of Professional Development. You see all the people working here. You see Elaine, Jessica Brown, Lupe Riccone, Linda Gibbons, Yvonne Smith. All these people have been working double time to keep the wagon glued together, but they all have full-time jobs. And we're really feeling the pinch right now. Of course, we're coming right off the heels of midwinter, and so we've found a lot, analyze, oh yes, we should have done this differently, should have done that, so we're feeling a little guilty about the fact that we're not as efficient as we'd like to be, but we think that perhaps restoring the Director of Professional Development position will be really helpful for that. It'll give us consistency. It'll give us somebody who's paying attention to all of the little details. And it just will provide a much needed 30,000-foot view that it's really hard for us to make sure that we have that. We've worked very hard, and these folks have worked very hard before I got here to make sure that things were held together. But I don't know how much longer, they'll do what you tell them to do, but I don't know how much longer they can keep it up. So we're happy to take questions.
Board members' questions.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your letting us know how hard it has been for you to do it kind of on a la carte or hodgepodge, maybe is not the right word, basis, but you do a wonderful job. I especially appreciate the overview because, I haven't had that broad picture, and we do an awful lot. I appreciate the opportunities when you welcome board members to attend. I mean, I know technically we're always invited, but when you go out of your way to invite us, I've been able to go to all the summer institutes, the racial equity summer institutes, and several of the building racial equity meetings, and I've been super impressed at the depth of content and discussion that goes on each time. I mean, it's very helpful to me as an individual, but also makes me feel very good about what's going on in our district. I have sort of two questions. One is, and you talked about that at the very end, but I was wondering the attention given to new principal training. Not just brand new, although we do have several brand new, but even just 1, 2, 3, 4-year principals. I mean, it's a big job. Did I understand you to say that there are a couple things that we hope to put in place next fall, but there has been nothing in place up till now for principals to acclimate them to their very important job?
Not in the last couple of years that we've been able to figure out.
Wow, that's a huge gap. I mean, that's just a statement.
Most of the mentoring that takes place is typically through the evaluation process with whomever their evaluator is, making sure certain things are met. Most of the time, administrators in the buildings are responsible for the professional development and other things that are going on in their building. So what we've done before, I think Gail led this effort a number of times where we actually had programs on different areas that they should be, I call it Administrator 101, where we would bring them in and actually have outside individuals going over items that you should know, but perhaps you don't. Now that has been a number of years ago. As you know, I've been convalescing for a while, so I'm not sure what was happening in between, but that's what we did. And what I've discovered since I've been back is that there is a lack of institutional knowledge about how things should and shouldn't be done. And there's a lack of historical knowledge as well. And so I think we've been filling in the gaps a lot. However, I think those things have to be a part of whatever professional development you are creating. I think we rely a lot on the Regional Office of Education. We rely a lot on the Illinois Association of Principals. But a lot of those things are dependent on the principals being willing to do that voluntarily. So, I don't know, Gail, you want to add anything else, or?
No, it's just that we need to establish a handbook for administrators as well as other here-to information so that they would know, and that way things don't fall through the cracks. So.
Yeah, and I think with that handbook would also be opportunities for professional development as far as administratively, because again, they're involved in PBIS, they're involved in MTSS, they're involved in all of the things that you hear. But there's also a uniqueness that comes with sitting in that chair. How to work with parents, how to work with staff, how to work with students that might be disruptive, how to work with superintendents who might have all of the above. And so I think you don't always get that in your coursework. You know, it's kind of like what you learn in class and then what you learn from experiencing. And having someone that understands how to look at something and say, hey, you need to think about this. I know Joe's looking at me because I know I've been over there with the middle school a few times pointing things out with him, but you're patient with me, Joe, thank you. But I think those things are necessary, and I think unless administrators get some of those things, along with all of the other things that we're talking about, it makes things kind of difficult. So we're working along those lines, along with the handbook, along with looking at offerings.
Yeah.
Takes time.
Yeah. Well, thank you, but it's kind of alarming to me that we've ignored this super important task. And I'm not, you guys are doing a great job. We have ignored that, so thank you.
Peggy, did you have a second question? You started with saying you did. Okay. Other board members?
This is for Linda, I guess. So we were talking about MTSS, and I really appreciate that it's been a data-driven approach, even though it's kind of nice that you're kind of figuring things out as this new plan has been going along. But, and this might be a little too early, but is there any plan with regards to sharing data as 8th graders matriculate up into the high school and dealing with that?
I think that's a great suggestion. I have heard those discussions in the past about doing that. I know some of our teams do share information as kids go into the middle school. I'm hopeful, that will happen, and I'll take note of that and make sure that I, suggest that.
Okay, and we do share academic data across levels. So the fifth graders bring their information with them to the middle school. We now have information at 8th grade that they can take with them to the high school, and they're already sharing their winter marks so that they can do some course planning.
Other board members? Thank you. This has been helpful. Next on our agenda is call for future special or executive meetings. And I'm glad to say that between now and next Tuesday, when we meet again at our business meeting, that we only have one meeting to talk about, which is Thursday evening with our consultants at 6:30 Thursday night, starting here. So, and that's with our superintendent search consultants. And that, they'll be at the end of 2 days of intensive amounts of input that they will have received from almost nonstop meetings for 2 days straight, including the evenings. So it should be hopefully, the goal that night, however, is not for them to tell us what they've heard those last 2 days. It's for them to hear from us, and then we will meet with them again at a later moment where they'll put everything together and refer it to us. Superintendent report.
I can pretty much guarantee you they're not going to tell you what they've discovered at
No.
that point.
No.
Having gone through that process as a consultant, even though you will probably ask a million times, there are 1,000,001 ways to get around that. I think my biggest thing is it's March. I know at this point in time people are a little tired. The weather's not quite where it should be. But I think what we as educators and board members have to continue to remember is that out of the 4,800 students that we have in the district, that 99.8% of them are doing the right thing each and every day. I hope through Tiger Spotlight I'm trying to get you to come out of the weeds, so to speak, as a community, to understand that we have kids that are doing tremendous things. Sometimes it's not expressed that way, but I am trying to be as patient as possible as a retiree to working with our community as a whole to understand that we work with children. Children make mistakes. They learn from it, just like most of us have. If you look back in our past, I'm sure we've done some things that we really don't want people to know about. I'm just saying that from the standpoint of we've got good kids. They work hard. They do the best they have with what they got. And we need to celebrate that and lift them up as much as possible. And they'll be okay if we allow them to be okay and not focus on the negative. And so I hope everyone realizes that. For me, tomorrow night I will be at Springfield Southeast. Hopefully we can take care of those rail splitters from Lincoln. Hey, I will be there with my Tiger colors on. But again, I just want people to understand we've got great kids. They make mistakes, but they grow out of it. They're kids. So that's my superintendent's report. Thank you.
Board reports, talking about lifting up. We have not yet, as a board, just alerted each other that we have this Champaign-Urbana Schools Foundation dinner coming up with our honorees, and we have several again representing, it's not just the Urbana, but it's a business. So hopefully board members will make an effort to be at that. I'm sitting here trying to remember the date. It is March 30th. That's what I thought. And so I would encourage anyone in town that is interested to take a look at that. I hope that our high school administration is looking at some, we'd like to have a lot of student representatives there as well.
We do have students, John, 10.
Excellent, and I know that our law firm has some, maybe some seats to give away as well, so maybe some additional students. So board members, please consider attending that. Other board reports?
I would just like to say that we had a great turnout, I thought, at the IASB dinner in Mahomet Seymour they hosted. We had 2 different breakout sessions. One was a candidate forum for candidates running for the school board, and the other one was about sex trafficking right here in our state of Illinois, and it was very, very informative. I was very happy to see that one of our school board new candidates running, Ms. Tori Exum, was able to attend that, and I think it was very beneficial. And I'd also like to say Ann Hall got a certificate of appreciation for being at the delegate assembly this year since I was out of state. So thank you, Ann. I appreciate that. Yep.
Board members. All right, motion to adjourn would be in order.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. We're adjourned.